This Jocks 94.5 podcast is brought to you by Millennium Satellite and Video. Log on to msbnow.com. TV excellence everywhere. That's Millennium. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning starts now.
All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Glad you're with us. Hour number 2 underway right here, Friday, August 8th, 8 a.m. on Jocks. Listen online, jocksfm.com. Apps in your App Store, iPhone, Android, you can download that for free. That directs you to all the podcasts. That directs you to YouTube as well. A lot of different ways that you can tune in. Your CBD store wants to help you out in a lot of different ways. If you need a better night's sleep, if you need to wake up, feel refreshed, if you need energy throughout the day, better focus throughout the course of the day, your CBD store can help with that. Largest brick-and-mortar CBD retailer in the world. First company to have USDA-certified organic oil supplements. If you have arthritis, if you have anxiety, they have products that can help with both. And even your pet arthritis or anxiety, they can help with that. Skincare, gut health for your pets as well. They've helped multiple pets in my household. They can do the same for yours at your CBD store. Here's what you're going to do. Go by one of their 3 locations. Highway 280 by Bailey Brothers, 150 by the Cage in Cleaver. Trustful just off 459, your CBD store where good health hits home. All right, let's go to Wes Mitchell. Talk South Carolina camp so far and how things are progressing. Wes, first off, how healthy are the Gamecocks so far through fall camp?
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me on. I would say so far so good. You know, this is always, I would say, about a weekend is the point in camp where you start to hear, hey, this guy's dinged up, this guy's banged up. Obviously, you're always just hoping you don't hear about the big one. Has anybody, gotten seriously injured? From what we understand, and Shane hasn't spoken in a couple of days, but as of right now, as far as we know, they are pretty healthy so far.
Looking at the defense, and look, all of my questions surround the defense. I feel like the offense can be really good. I have no worries on that side of the ball, assuming Lenore Sellers is healthy. But the defense, there are so many pivotal pieces to replace. Where are we at right now as far as solidifying that starting 11, and what does the ceiling look like for that group across the board?
Yeah, I think that's where everybody's going to start when they talk about this team. Interestingly enough, even though Nikki Mawori is probably the single best just player/athlete, although D-Knight may argue with you there that they have to replace, I actually think that they're in a good spot in the secondary. They bring back a lot of guys. They bring back a lot of experience. They brought in Brandon Cisse, who was a starter at NC State. Torian Gray does as good a job as anybody, who is their defensive backs coach. I think they're in a good place there. I think you have to talk about the linebackers and really the interior of that defensive line are the areas where I think are the greatest concern. Now, internally, they're going to have to go prove it, obviously, but internally they actually, I think, have started to feel pretty good about this linebacking core, kind of being able to reload there. They've brought in a couple of transfers. They have a kid, J.R. Johnson, who was a true freshman last year that they expect to take a step. He's a freak athlete. He is kind of in that Bam Martin Scott, Demetrius Knight mold in terms of athleticism. So I think there's some quiet confidence actually with that linebacking group. To me, if you're really going to focus in and dial in on a spot that you say is still a question, it's those defensive tackles where you have to replace a TJ Sanders, replace a Boogie Huntley, replace a Tonka Hemingway. Those guys did so much for so long for South Carolina that I think that's where – I'm not going to say they can't get it done, but I definitely think there's going to be a little step back there. And, overall, when you talk about the upside, I think the question is, can this defensive line just as a whole be as havoc-producing as that group was last year? That was kind of what made it all click for them. I think, that's probably where I say their upside might be just a little bit limited compared to what it was last year.
We're visiting with Wes Mitchell, talking South Carolina football on the Higginbotham Hotline. I'm one that kind of feels like they can, just because they have so many bodies that have been on that defense, in that scheme for such a long period of time. And then, too, what I think is most intriguing about South Carolina right now, Wes, is we could go back the last 3-4 years. Shane Beamer's just flat out done more with less in the portal than anybody else in the league. I mean, there have been multiple guys that have started games, made big plays, been big players that we had no discussion about before the season. Is there a guy or two that may be sort of looking like he's going to fill that role again for the Gamecocks this year?
Yeah, I thought you might ask me that, Cole. And so Let me first of all give you a guy on offense who is the perfect example of that, and that's Boaz Stanley. This is a kid who was at Troy last year, and we kind of fun story. We got word, all right, this guy might be visiting South Carolina. We started asking around. I Google his name, try to get some background. It hadn't even been reported that he had entered the portal. He was so kind of low-key of a guy. We found out, he's been in the portal for, I think it was a few weeks at the time, which is like 10 years in portal years. And, he visits South Carolina, commits like the day he's on campus, signs, and next thing you know, he enrolls and basically is the huge favorite to be the starting center this year. So he's going to take over that spot on offense. I think he just kind of fits that mold you're talking about. They really just kind of know what they're looking for, and then they don't really seem to worry about the PR of, hey, is this a four-star, highly recruited guy or not? On defense, I wouldn't say it's quite in the same realm as going to find a Demetrius Knight at Charlotte. But Sean Murphy is a guy who was highly, highly recruited out of high school, out of Virginia, but he went to Alabama, then he transferred to Florida State. He transferred out of Florida State. And really just in terms of attention and his kind of recruiting stock and all that, it had kind of fallen off. And he's really come in and impressed. I think he's a good fit for what Clayton White likes to do at that linebacker position, has actually brought some leadership ability. They really like these guys that kind of have an extra level of maturity. Clayton White always talks about, hey, D-Knight's married with 2 kids, and, Sean is either married or engaged and just kind of is at a next step of his life. And so Boaz, same thing, actually. He got, I think, married this past offseason. So they really like these guys that have kind of their life a little bit more at a further along stage off the field as well, I feel like.
What about the receivers? That was a group that was hindered last year at times with injury and inconsistency. Are they trending in the right direction there? And in particular, where's Nick Harbor with his development after taking the year off finally from running track?
Yeah, I think that is the spot where the perception of what South Carolina is, maybe nationally or regionally at wide receiver, is the most different compared to kind of where I think it is here locally. Like I think the receiving core actually has a decent chance to go from a big question mark last year to being potentially a strength. You start with Harbor. I don't think maybe he's ready to go out there and catch 70 balls like Alshon Jeffrey did back in the day, but I do think just giving up track, which took up so much of his time in the spring. People forget this past spring was the first ever spring practice he's actually been able to go through and develop at South Carolina. So I think that's been big for Nick. I do think it'll still be a little bit more of a receiver by committee, but you look at the guys they bring back. Jared Brown, I think, has a chance to have a good year. Mazio Bennett should take another step. Vandrevius Jacobs, who was a transfer in from Florida State last offseason, he's had a really good offseason this year. And then all of these freshmen have come in. They brought in 6 all kind of highly recruited freshman wide receivers. They're all talented kids. They're up, they're down, but they're all pushing each other. They all have big upsides. They got a kid, Brian Rowe, who's kind of a smaller but speedy 41-inch vertical kind of slot guy that has really impressed since he arrived. Donovan Murph is another freshman wide receiver I think has a chance. So they're still a little bit young when you get behind the top kind of 3 or 4 guys, but these young kids have really come in and just pushed the guys ahead of them. So I think they kind of quietly feel good about that receiving core as well. And I don't really think it's a worry at all here, even though if you're kind of outside looking in, you're probably looking at last year and saying, man, are they going to have enough weapons around Lenore Sellers?
I don't think the weaponry and its potential is a massive question. I just think it's more of who's going to step up and who's going to be able to help make those changes. What part of Lenore's game do you feel like can make the biggest leap, possibly will make the biggest leap this season?
Yeah, if you talk to Lenore's, the big thing with him has just been kind of his anticipation. I mean, I think this is a kid, like, there's this narrative around here. I think it's just kind of a Clemson fan thing almost of like, oh, this guy's a running back playing quarterback, which if you watch more than one drive of him, you'll realize that's absolutely not the case. But, he can physically make all the throws out there. I think for him, it's just more about being a little bit more consistent with his accuracy and being able to anticipate those throwing windows as opposed to kind of having to see them before he lets it rip. So, he's been focused on basically footwork, technique, kind of the cliches and stuff like that, but mainly anticipation in the passing game. Just, I think Mike Shula has been really good for him. Shula came in last year and was the assistant quarterbacks coach, as you guys know. Now he's taking on a bigger role this year as the offensive coordinator. But those two guys have really connected, and again, I think he's been good for Lenoris. So I think for him, it's just, man, putting together, like you see all the flashes. It's just, at times being willing to just live another down, I think. That's something Shula has really tried to ingrain in him is like, hey, this play does not have to be the highlight play every single time the ball is snapped. Let's live for the next down. Let's stay on schedule. The boring stuff that fans don't love to hear, but are obviously incredibly important in winning football games.
It feels like last year, though, he started to really start to believe in what he was capable of. Like you saw over the course of the season, his confidence level grow drastically. Is he the same guy mentally this year where he's kind of picked up where he left off with confidence and belief?
I think so. And, I think he's always kind of played that way, but as, with any guy making that big jump to another level, we saw it if you look at the ODU game. He was hesitant. He admitted he was nervous. It might have been the first time he'd ever been nervous in his playing career. And, it did take, I think, a little bit of time for him to be like, okay, I'm still who I think I am. And, I think the big thing for him, too, just from like a mindset standpoint, is he's trying to be a little bit more of a vocal leader this year and kind of not just be the guy who goes out there and does it on the field, but truly kind of leads his teammates, in practice and in the, in the facility as well. So that's something that doesn't necessarily, and he'll admit it, come like naturally to him. He's not a huge rah-rah guy, and you don't really have to be, but I do think just in terms of taking over not just the offense but the entire program and that leadership role is something he has been focused on this offseason. But the thing about Lenoris is the more you're around him, you'll realize, man, this kid just has this kind of innate, very quiet confidence to where a lot of times I don't think he feels like he has to say anything. He's just going to go show you what he's going to do. And he has incredibly high expectations for himself. And, I don't think he'd ever say this in a press conference, but he has incredibly high, like, national championship level expectations for the program, which obviously is what you ultimately want from your competitor, from your quarterback.
I'm with you. Watching the Netflix deal too, you got a little bit more of that from him, a little more behind the scenes of him, and I've had a chance to talk to him before games and obviously sit down with him a few times, but he continues to impress the more you're around him, the more you see him. So we appreciate the time today, Wes. Great stuff, great insight to South Carolina, what's happening so far through fall camp. We'll have you back soon, discuss it more.
All right, guys, I appreciate it and love what y'all do, so I definitely appreciate the time today too.
Absolutely. Thank you, Wes. Wes Mitchell for Gamecock Central, part of the On3 Sports Network, at Wes Mitchell GC. You can follow him on Twitter. All right, so before we go to a break, Wes mentioned national championship aspirations for Lenore Sellers. Don't know if you can get a national championship ring, GMAC, but you can get a lot of other rings at Bromberg's.
Yeah, Bromberg's is where I've been going for a very long time. I always appreciate everything I receive when I walk in the door, and it's not even just the jewelry that I purchase. It's really the experience that I have when sitting there talking with friends of mine that are sales staff, seeing the selection, going through the options, and helping me out. And right now they're actually upgrading the Mountain Brook Village store to better accommodate their customers. It's just going to be a next level experience. It always is when you shop with the very best, a company that's been in business for nearly 200 years. That's time tested and proven over the course of multiple generations. that they will serve this community and they will serve the people of this community. So highly recommend going and checking out Bromberg's in Mountain Brook Village and at the Summit.
All right, speaking of national championships, that has been a topic of conversation around the SEC. Some by folks who we may not expect. We'll let you hear that next on Mac and Cube in the morning.
Go inside Jocks 94.5 on Jocks TV. Morning Jocks, Mac and Cube, three-man front video simulcasts are presented by Bill Smith Buick GMC and Game Day Men's Health. Watch on the Jocks mobile app and YouTube by searching Jocks 94.5 TV.